endorsement, an important one. Matt Hancock, he's the Health Secretary and was himself a candidate for the leadership of the Tory party. But last night he said he would be supporting Mr Johnson. Not welcome news for the other candidates, one of whom is Michael Gove, of course, and he is with me. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, John.
Depressing for you, that.
Well, disappointing, naturally. I'm a huge fan of Matt's. He's a brilliant cabinet minister and an old friend,
aren't you?
Yes, he is a friend of mine. And I know that over the course of the weekend, he had a very tough decision to make. And without going into private conversations, I know that he was alternating between supporting Boris and supporting me. He felt that we were the two strongest candidates in the race. But I understand his decision-making. It's laid out in a very clear, good article in the Times today. And as I say, I have a very, very high regard for Matt. I think he's an outstanding health secretary. He has an enormous amount to offer. And during his leadership campaign, he laid out an approach which I think is right for the Conservative Party, which is to be pragmatic and pro-business, and at the same time to recognise that when we leave the European Union, there are significant opportunities for us to make our country fairer.
Mr Johnson, of course, appears not to be pro-business. Didn't he say F business or something to that effect?
Well, I think those words were taken out of context.
Well, they always are, aren't they?
Yes, I wasn't there.
But it's pretty unlikely that somebody says that. Anyway, perhaps it was.
I wasn't there. I never heard them uttered. I think that in context, someone was trying to suggest that because a particular business organisation took a particular view that Boris was wrong. And I think that actually, as we know, in some of the big questions that this country has faced, business has had a wide spectrum of views. And I think, to be fair to Boris, when he was mayor of London, he was emphatically pro-enterprise and he supported financial services and he made sure that there was investment in infrastructure and in the support that our financial services and our other businesses needed in our capital.
The real reason, presumably, that Matt Hancock supported Mr Johnson is that he is backing the winner. That's what he views, what he thinks.
Matt made clear in his article that he believes that Boris has particular strengths which he wants to
He thinks
support.
He'll win.
Well, I think the key thing is this is an open contest.
You are required to say yes or no to that. Well, you're not required.
No.
You're invited to say yes or no to that. He thinks he'll win, clearly.
Well, do get Matt on. He's an eloquent performer as well as a great minister, and Matt will explain his reasoning to you. Let me explain my analysis of the contest. At the moment, yes, of course it is the case that Boris is the front runner, but we need to make sure that he is tested and that we have two candidates who go forward, if Boris is one of them, who we know are capable of being Prime Minister from day one. And one thing that everyone in this race has acknowledged is that I've shown in 3 government departments a grip of detail, a command of policy, an ability to make changes happen, which mean that, if for any reason I were to become the candidate against Boris and then to win, which I believe that I can do, then I would be ready to be Prime Minister. I would be ready to take control of the ship of state and steer it safely through the difficult waters ahead.
You suffered a bit, your campaign suffered a bit when your so-called cocaine habit was exposed. Should Boris Johnson suffer a bit because of his moral probity, or as many people believe, lack of moral probity?
Oh, I would dismiss that altogether. I think all of the candidates...
moral probity doesn't matter?
No, moral probity does matter. But I think that all of the candidates who are standing to be leader, in my view, are capable of being Prime Minister.
That wasn't the question I asked you.
No, quite.
It's a slightly different question. Aren't we entitled to believe that the leader of our country, the Prime Minister, is a man or woman of moral probity?
Look, I personally think that Boris and all the other candidates are people who, on every ground, have what it takes to be a potentially good Prime Minister. The key thing is, I am not going to criticise other candidates because, in essence, we are all on the same team. I might play for Manchester City, you might play for Manchester United, we might have friendly rivalry, but when we're playing for our country together, we have got to make sure that we unite in order to do best for our country.
The flaw in that argument is that you've already criticised Boris Johnson.
The key thing is, two things, John. The key thing is, I believe that I can bring together all of the disparate talents in the Conservative Party and be a unifying figure. There are one or two aspects of some of the candidacies that are polarising, that put certain people into certain corners. The one thing, again, that everyone acknowledges in this race is not just that I'm the person with the most effective ministerial record, though, again, it's always difficult sometimes to be so, what's the word, direct about your own strengths, but I suppose in a race you have to be. But the other thing that everyone acknowledges is that I am a candidate who, if they were captain of the team, everyone else would willingly and happily serve under.
But what you have said, you would happily... If I understand you correctly, you've said you would happily serve under Boris Johnson.
Yes, I would, but all of the candidates have said that they would happily serve under me. It's not the case with all of the candidates that they could command the degree of unity that I believe that I could.
So let me, in that case, try to get an answer to the question that, with respect, I don't think you did answer earlier, and that is the question of moral probity, because you will know the various, I was going to say allegations against Mr. Johnson over the years. Some of them have not been denied. Look, the fact that he does tell lies, or has told pretty significant lies, and he was not terribly competent, many say, as Foreign Secretary. We have to look at the tragic case of Nazanin Zaghari-Ratcliffe. And are you not at all concerned about a Prime Minister whom you said you would serve having that sort of record?
Well, John, if you want to put those questions direct to Boris himself, I know...
I'd very much like to, of course. Very much like to.
I know that he will answer them, but let me defend...
But I'm asking you your view, because...
Yeah, no, I will happily defend Boris on this, because I think, look... there have been various attempts to mount personal attacks against him and against some other candidates. I think that is wrong. Look, in the past, I've had my criticisms and differences with Boris, but I believe that he is someone who is capable of being Prime Minister. But the key question is, who do we believe is the person with the best record in office and the clearest vision for the future? And if it is the case that people believe that Boris should be on the ballot, the other question I would ask is then, who is the best person to stand alongside him? If you do have doubts, you've expressed some, John. I don't share the specific doubts.
Well,
no. But if you believe that you need to have any of the candidates tested, then have someone else on the ballot paper whom you know can put arguments on the basis of policy fairly and strongly and clearly,
so you would balance,
and who is a strong alternative who could be Prime Minister on day one.
Alternatively, you would be the man, therefore, who balances Boris Johnson's weaknesses. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that in this race, I'm seeking to argue that the particular mix of experience that I have in transforming our schools, improving our justice system, and putting the environment at the heart of British politics is right for now. But more than that, I've outlined a clear policy agenda which helps to bring this country together. We all know that the referendum result wasn't simply a rejection of politics as usual. It was also a cry from overlooked families and undervalued communities for change. And I am the candidate who has brought change most successfully and most determinedly to every job that they've done.
What you can't do is guarantee the people of this country that we will be out of Europe by the end of this year, can you?
I believe that we will be out before October 31st.
You believe that we will be, but you can't guarantee that, can you?
Well, I think we can make sure. I have a plan, I think the most comprehensive plan of any of the candidates, to get us out of the European Union, a plan which involves, firstly, making sure that we have a full stop to the backstop, that we work with the Irish government and the German government.
They tried very hard to do, of course.
Yes, but I think one of the differences is that, I'm a great fan of the Prime Minister, but I'm someone who argued for Brexit from the beginning. And I think it's important that you have a government that believes that leaving the European Union is an opportunity to be grasped rather than an obligation to be discharged. And more than that, it is not enough just to believe in Brexit. You've got to be able to deliver it. And I showed, both during the referendum campaign, when I led the campaign to victory, but also
Boris Johnson says he led the campaign to victory, of course, doesn't he? But there we are. We'll put that.
I think that,
and during the course of the campaign, told a few porkies as well.
Well, I think that Boris was a critical part of the campaign, absolutely, and
not as important as you. All right, let's.
No. I think both of us complimented each other during that campaign.
What you would not do,
but the critical thing is that you need to have a clear plan. And one of the worries that I have is that a case has been made that if we are close to getting a deal on October the 31st, we're almost there, but not quite. One or two of the candidates...
But have no specifics.
Well, no.
On backstop, for instance.
I do have...
You want not to have an indefinite existence.
I have lots of specifics, but let me give you two. One one specific difference between me and other candidates. Other candidates say, if we're almost there on October the 31st, but not quite there, tell you what, we will rip up all the progress we've made and try to leave without a deal. That would mean a vote of confidence in Parliament, a general election, and Corbyn in Downing Street by Christmas. I will not do that. And then on the backstop, it is clear in EU...
Well, what is it? What is the plan? I don't know what the plan is.
I'm just telling you, John. I'm just telling you. You know, I sometimes describe myself as a young man in a hurry. You're a...
a younger? No.
You're a man at the prime of life, occasionally.
We haven't got very long, as you know.
Here is the answer. The key thing is, in EU law, it is explicit that the backstop must be temporary. There are ways in which we can ensure that we have both an exit mechanism and a time limit in order to ensure that we don't either have to go in it, or if we are in it, we're not in it for any length of time.
As simple as
and we
that.
can do so. Well, it's...
I mean, it's extraordinary that the existing Prime Minister didn't go for it. If it's that
one
simple.
Of the key things is that it was only towards the end of Theresa's premiership that we secured an agreement from the EU in Strasbourg to work on alternative arrangements to deal with some of the issues on the Irish border.
To have anything to do with rewriting the withdrawal agreement.
John,
absolutely flatly refused, and still are.
Again, they have made it clear that they will work on alternative arrangements that deal with the real issues. There are issues on the Irish border. Those issues relate to the position of Northern Ireland's nationalist community, to the specific interests of...
Which ain't going to change.
Yes, no, but there are things that can change. The specific interests of cross-border communities and also cross-border trade. All of those issues can be dealt with. We can make sure that we have nationalist representation in UK government by restoring the institutions in the north, in Northern Ireland, and we can also make sure that we deal with cross-border communities by making sure that we have investment, and we can deal with cross-border trade by having ways in which we do not need checks at the border.
A final thought, one of your opponents, Dominic Raab, will not rule out suspending Parliament in order to get us out by October the 31st. You won't do the same.
I absolutely won't, no. One of the reasons why I argued that Britain should leave the European Union is that I want to strengthen Parliament and strengthen our historic institutions. I think it would be wrong to, having voted to return power to Parliament, then say to Parliament, sorry, you're going to stand in my way, I'm going to ignore your democratic wishes. I think if we're going to leave the European Union without a deal, then Parliament has to vote to support it.
Which more than do, and therefore we might be in the Union for a very long time to come.
No, I think two things, John. There are two types of defeatism in this debate. There is a type of defeatism that says, look, I can't convince Parliament, so I'll put it to one side.
Based on experience.
I'll put it to one side. And there's another type of defeatism that says, do you know what? I cannot get a better deal from the European Union. You're just going to have to suck it up on this one. I do not take that approach. I think there is ample room to secure a better deal, goodwill on the part of our European partners who want to ensure that we avoid a no-deal scenario, and also the capacity to win support in the House of Commons for it. Because what we need to do is to secure a good deal that keeps us or ensures that as a newly liberated nation, we can take all the opportunities of leaving the European Union, but do so in a way that makes sure that our neighbours in the Republic of Ireland and the European Union know that we are good friends and strong partners.